Well, this afternoon, we're here with Jay Biggins from Biggins Lacy Shapiro. They're an incentives and location firm, and Jay will tell us a lot more about what he does. Jay and I had the great pleasure of working together on the site selection for Cellectis, a French U-Cart company that ended up locating their U.S. manufacturing facility in Raleigh, North Carolina. Jay, great to have you with us today.
Good to see you as well.
So Jay, I'm curious, you've been doing what you do for a long time. How did you find your way into what is a really important service to companies that are growing and locating their business for expansion?
Yeah, so I found ourselves in this business coming through the public sector. Worked for Mayor Ed Koch in New York as Director of Economic Development for the city, and had to learn in some very challenging times during the city's fiscal crisis how economic conditions, employment conditions, tax and regulatory environment, how those variables affect how companies decide where to locate their jobs and investment. And it was critical for the city that that we get that right, because there was a flight of capital, of talent, of companies, and all the assets that had feet or wheels were leaving. So the mayor, to his credit, really helped turn that whole narrative around. With an aggressive economic development strategy, including tax and regulatory environment, and also focused on building and incubating the intellectual property assets that were abundant still in New York, but that hadn't really been leveraged to the fullest extent. And that was really when I got started in the life sciences industry, with trying to really capture the intellectual property that, as soon as it's ready for commercialization, was leaving New York for somewhere else. And that led to the development of the East River Science Park, which has become the Alexandria Park down on the Lower East Side, with this majestic location on the East River, and having created a wonderful environment for both business and scientific personnel for a wide range of companies, from the smallest startups to BMS and Lilly and others. So that project is now in its nth generation of growth, and we've had the pleasure of and the privilege of helping a number of companies decide to locate operations there over the last 15 years.
What a great story. What a great place to really see the power and impact of how policy and can both attract businesses and also make a difference for a business that's just in the early stages of development to really come on strong. And also really fascinating to hear that your roots in what you do are tied to the life sciences, which is a lot of what we want to talk to you about today. So I'm guessing that implies that life sciences have been an important component of your business right along, but I gotta believe in the last, let's call it 3 years, it's becoming a much more vibrant part of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we have consulting teams in a number of industry verticals, from financial services, data centers, specialty manufacturing. But life sciences has been among our longest standing and most active, really on a durable basis over many years. But as you say, particularly in the last 3 to 5 years, that explosion of activity has just been one of the main drivers for both talent attraction, real estate investment, R&D investments across the entire spectrum of activity. Life sciences has been really an outstanding, shall we say, industry sector, even as others during the recession had, we're having ups and downs, but very low peaks and perhaps medium valleys, life sciences has been a stalwart throughout.
Jay, in terms of the searches you've been doing over the past 3 to 5 years, what's the composition of a typical client? Where are they in their continuum? Are you seeing early stage all the way to pretty broad commercial manufacturing, or has there been a focus and a concentration of the client type?
It's been across the spectrum. I mean, the smaller companies need more assistance. They don't have internal teams that are experienced and geared to deal with the issues that arise in connection with having to make a location decision from where they started, having to figure out how to grow with external capital that may include public sector financing for the first time after having received institutional support, whether through NIH or through university alliances and collaborations, or VC funding, which is also growing rapidly in some of the subsectors of the life sciences community. But as you move up the food chain, if you will, to much larger companies, they have much more complex and abundant internal capabilities, but also everybody's busy. And doing site selection, figuring out where to put a major project is not the core competency of people who are doing this full time in even the largest companies. So it's the right decision in many, if not most cases, to engage an objective expert outside team that may include site selection consultants, real estate brokers, including folks on the architectural and engineering side to help with programming, and so to put the whole package together and bring it to the market in a way that really follows his best practices in the procurement of anything. We all know that especially in large companies, the procurement process has become so highly professionalized and process driven. The procurement of place is, the selection of a location is really no different. And it too has been highly professionalized, much more analytically driven, rigorous, objective, and defensible. And we find that the process that we go through is immensely helpful for companies to build internal consensus around the best locations for the project and why. So it's data driven. It's not all statistics, but there are lots of qualitative factors as well, quality of life considerations and so on that go into it. In some ways, that decision is similar for a 10-person company growing to be 50 as it is for a company that's global and wants to establish a new production facility in a place where they don't currently have a presence. All the same questions arise, all the same questions have to be addressed.
Well, Jay, there's so much in what you've said. First off, I think it has been fascinating to look at the teams that need to be assembled to really execute on behalf of a requirement. We're actively involved in the real estate component while you're looking at all of the factors in a geography that contribute, and the collaboration is really important. So it's good that you hit on that. And then this is a terrific segue to talk about your recent announcement about a partnership that you've put together to really assist companies in doing exactly what you just talked about.
Yeah, it's really, as you just said, it's the need to deliver clients with a holistic suite of services that is going to get them to market as quickly as possible. If there's one abiding theme where we're seeing in almost every engagement, it's speed to market. That's both competitively driven as well as cost driven. Also, companies that are bringing important new therapies to market, they're driven to sort of get those therapies to patients as quickly as possible, and that's their mission. So it's our responsibility throughout all of us who work in this industry are finding that anything that can be done to accelerate the process of deciding where to go, deciding how to implement, getting up and operational, and getting the commissioning and validation of these operations so that they can begin production, for production facilities, is really the most critical, and the critical path needs to get that sort of scrutiny every day. And how can it be shortened? How can we engage processes in as much a parallel path as possible without sacrificing quality and rigor? So
Go ahead.
that's the background for our recent joining of an alliance with two other service firms with whom we've worked for many years. One is Ewing Cole, so obviously homegrown, important sort of corporate citizen here. And the other is Facility Logics, which is based in Maryland and has been assisting life sciences companies with strategy, facility strategy for many, many years. We put this group together, really formalized the kind of work that we've been doing together anyway into a formalized process in order to provide end-to-end planning and execution, again, to provide speed to market without sacrificing rigor and objectivity in the process.
So as a nearby neighbor to Philadelphia, sitting up in Princeton, you certainly have a number of requirements that you work with that are based from North Jersey down to Philadelphia. On top of that, I know you do a number of East Coast wide and even national searches. So you look at a lot of different geographies. And I think it would be helpful to talk a little bit about how you see things shaping up in terms of the decisions that your clients are making, and how perhaps the Philadelphia region that's really experiencing an incredible burst of science development with the gene and cell therapies that are bubbling out of our institutions, Penn, CHOP, Wistar, Jefferson, Temple. It's really been a hotbed of development here. How can we understand the dynamics that you look at, and what are the things that really shape and make an area attractive to your clients and to the analysis that you do? Sure.
Well, so first of all, you if anything, what you just said was an understatement. I mean, Philadelphia is a hothouse of activity in life sciences across a lot of sectors, but gene and cell therapy has really been popping, and for all the right reasons. You've got that sort of full life cycle of ingredients necessary to both begin and grow those kinds of assets, starting with the IP in your local institutions. The CHOP is amazing, and the other institutions, and then you've got the organic base of entrepreneurs and mid and even large scale pharma, kind of all sort of looking to prospect and leverage that intellectual property with capital and expertise. So you've got all of the ingredients that we all have been hearing about clusters for many years. I think that was a Michael Porter coined phrase. Clusters work for a reason, and that is it's the immediate density or the immediate proximity of all the ingredients that are necessary to promote growth and then sustainable growth. In fact, growth that builds on growth and that attracts even further growth of all of those ingredients, which include talent, include capital, includes organic, institutional assets that help create the kind of connecting tissue that make these clusters really work. Philadelphia has got immense advantages, and while there's a lot going on in other major metros, we'll say other clusters in the country and certainly the world, many of the searches that we're doing, I'm going to say roughly half, are really focused on the Mid-Atlantic. If not focused primarily, at least Mid-Atlantic will figure very prominently in the search. Some of the searches are true national searches, others have some institutional connection, some anchor that is giving them a rationale to focus in one place versus another, although those places still have to prove themselves. This process of site selection is fundamentally one of elimination. So, we may start with 10 or 12 MSAs around the country. And Philadelphia is going to stay on that list to get to many, many short lists just by virtue of its well-documented strengths. But when we get, the only way you actually get to a decision is by eliminating all the other options. And that's where Philadelphia needs to stay focused on how its strengths will keep them on the short list to the final finish. And costs there are overall costs of both delivering a project and then the ongoing run rate, the ongoing operating costs for which talent, which is one of Philadelphia's abiding strengths. But the talent is more expensive than in some areas and less expensive than others. So if these companies are looking at very substantial capital investment, that's up front. But the year in and year out cost is primarily the payroll. And that's where differences in average salaries that can range from the East Coast sectors, from Boston through New York, down through New Jersey, Philadelphia, or southeastern PA, Delaware, into Maryland, and then into the RTP area. There can be a 10 to 12 or even 15% spread in the average salaries for the positions that are going to be hired locally. So that's important. And now in some cases, there are location advantages for a particular company that just outweigh any cost savings, even a material cost savings. And that's why every one of these decisions is so different and it is so customized to the specific needs and priorities of each company. But Philadelphia is on every list to start, but it has to compete. It has to be competitive, and that's what this is all about, right? This is a competitive process, and we feel best about the wins we get if we really have to compete and be at the top of our game. And then Philadelphia has been doing well, but it needs to stay focused on the things that will be needed to make them competitive going forward.
Well, Jay, just to follow up on that for a second, what are the areas that are, as it were, headwinds for Philadelphia that perhaps we could be instrumental in getting them to be neutral, if not tailwinds? Because look, Jay, at the end of the day, our goal here in Philadelphia is to win a disproportionate share of those location searches right here in the Delaware Valley. So what do you see that could be done to improve in that area?
I think one consideration that we just touched on that I just have to go back to at the top of the list is cost. And that's the all-in cost of delivering and operating a project. And, the market delivers the cost. The only way that we can address costs is through public policy. Government has a legitimate role to play in effectively looking to improve the pricing decision for the markets that they're responsible for, and they do that through tax policy. They do that through incentives. And I'm going to say this: the Commonwealth has not been strong on incentives, and it could do more. And I know that there's discussion that's been going on, at all levels of government about the proper role and the proper levels of incentives that are material to the markets they're responsible for being successful as part of a global competitive process.
Well, Jay, I know this is going to be something we're going to want to talk with you more about. You've been very gracious with your time today. It's been a great look, and I think as I wrap things up, I think a little bit about where we started. If you could change policy in New York City, then I think you can be an influencer in policy in Philadelphia. We look forward to extending that conversation, and thank you so much for being with us.
Good to talk with you, Joe. Have a great day.